All right, welcome back to another edition of Coexist. I'm your host and creator of the Coexist podcast. This is Conversation for Conservation. And we were supposed to get on Facebook Live a couple of hours ago, but of course, issues happen in Africa. She was stuck in traffic. So our special guest, Raabia Hawa, you are here finally. Hallelujah.
And Thank you.
I'm very excited to speak with you. I got a lot of people in conservation, when I'm trying to find guests for the show who are compelling and fascinating and have an amazing story. I've been hearing from everybody, and then I heard about you and I'm like, I have got to get her on. So I feel like I'm speaking to a sister in Africa, in Kenya, and I'm very proud of everything I've researched on you. I'm really proud of you, and I'm amazed with you, and I can't wait to share your story with our listeners. And the impetus of this podcast was I'm the co-founder of Nsefu Wildlife, an anti-poaching foundation based in Zambia. So having this foundation for 6 years, I realize how incredibly difficult it is to run a foundation, especially one across the globe. And, there are so many great people and great organizations in the world that a lot of people aren't aware of. And they're doing God's work every day. They're out in the field. They have committed their lives 100% to the greater good. And your story resonates with me in a lot of ways. We are more similar than you may know. I come from a background of media, 35 years in radio. I was a former model, as you were. And yeah, so you modeled, you were a media personality, and you walked away from that life because you had a life-changing experience that brought you to the world of conservation. Thank God you had that tragedy brought you to the greater good. So I want to introduce you. You are the executive director of Ulinzi. Is it Ulinzi African Foundation? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, Ulinzi
Africa Foundation. You're behind Walk with Rangers, and you also have the Unbound Project. So you have so many things going on. We want to talk about these fascinating foundations and the work that you're doing, but I want to introduce you to people and hear your story. Were you born in Nairobi? Where were you born? How did you get from Raabia, the young girl, to the one today who's changing the world, fighting for conservation and raising awareness? Tell me about your story, how you got where you are, and I can't wait to hear about your projects.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity. And I would say it does sound like we're definitely kindred spirits and
yes,
kind of have had almost a similar life journey. Because I was on radio too for 13 years and then did TV for a bit, and then I wrote in the newspapers. I actually started writing in the newspapers when I had my first experience on the field, and I saw a poached elephant, and it was so beyond me that this was happening every day in Kenya, in my country, and we didn't know about it. I was in the media, and I'm kind of like the I would say like the point of information dissemination to the public, right? And if I don't know about it, that means for sure the public don't know about it. And that just bothered me so much. So I started actively joining rangers on the field, and every time I would come across a poached elephant or a poaching incident, I would write about it in the newspaper. And then it started getting picked up by other publications and radio and TV, and it's kind of drummed up this nationwide campaign to protect our wildlife. So yeah, so I would say that media has definitely been good to wildlife. It's been good to me, but I had to make the break because I just found my passion, and it became difficult at one point to separate the two, and to split myself in half. And I wanted to spend more time in the field and less time on the airwaves. And as much as I enjoyed being on radio and on TV, my heart wasn't in it anymore. Like I would find myself literally in a space where I'm physically in a studio, but I'm mentally and emotionally in the bush somewhere, running around, chasing poachers and living with rangers. And so, yeah, I had to make the hard decision. It was a very difficult call for me because obviously that was my only livelihood. But I made some savings and I decided, right, that's it. Like, this is going to be my life now, and I can say that it's the best decision I ever made. So
Yeah,
no regrets at all.
I really feel like I'm listening to myself, but you're
Uh-huh.
telling me the story. Everything you're saying, being in radio for a long time, I was gonna, retire, and I had started this, but what you just said is the first time somebody else has said it to me. My body was in the radio studio, but my mind was somewhere else. I wanted to be somewhere else. I was doing this job to support my job over there. And I get it, where you have to make that decision where, people said, are you going to go back into radio? I said, my calling is somewhere else right now.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's what it is. It's a calling, really. And I would say that, like, for me, again, going back a little bit, I was born in Nairobi. I lived around Africa because my dad was in aviation, and he used to work for Kenya Airways, and that meant that we would travel a lot. I have lived half my life on a plane going somewhere or coming back from somewhere. We always had a home base in Nairobi. But one thing that was, I would say, like a constant in my life was just wildlife and nature. My dad always made it a point of making sure that we either, wherever we went, we were either living close to wildlife or he would spend all his free time taking us to wildlife areas. So it's something that I would say he nurtured from a very young age, and it just never left my heart, I suppose. And yeah, I'm very grateful to my dad to this day. He's really honestly just been my rock, and always supporting what I do. Initially, when I started working with rangers, I didn't really tell him what I was doing because I was a little unsure that he might disapprove or, be a little apprehensive with the security situation and everything else. But yeah, when he found out, he was quite happy and very proud and continues to support me to this day. So it's been a very good journey. I have to say I'm very lucky and very almost privileged to have a father who's supportive, being a Muslim, being an Asian, being a woman. In this sphere, it's not been easy by any means. But you have that one person who just believes in you and keeps supporting you, and you just push forward, and you kind of get a strength from that, per se. So yeah, it's been a good journey so far. And yeah, it's kind of growing on its own. I never imagined I would ever have my own organization ever. I was quite happy just being on radio and running around in the bush with rangers in my free time. But I had obviously life experiences kind of shape how you, yeah, they shape your future, I would say. And I had those life experiences. My first life experience with regards to conservation was seeing a poached elephant, and that drove me to working with rangers. And then I became very close with rangers. They're like family. And I learned about all the challenges that they're facing, both on the field and at home. And it was very, very painful to know that they are really the frontline defenders of wildlife, and they're going through so much trauma, so much difficulty. And I really wanted to find a way to change that, but I didn't quite know how. I didn't quite have an idea of what I was going to do. And then in 2012, in January, two rangers that I had worked very closely with, one of whom had taught me everything I know about living in the wild and tracking poachers and differentiating between tracks of a hyena and a leopard or whatever. Um, both of them were shot by poachers in an encounter. One of them died on impact. The other was airlifted to Nairobi, and I happened to be in Nairobi at the time. I was actually supposed to be on the field with them that time, but I missed the bus. And just that same night, I got the call saying there's been contact, and there's a ranger being airlifted in the morning. And so I would go visit him in the hospital every day, and he was very, very despondent, very upset. He felt so let down. He felt undervalued, unappreciated. And I just wanted him to know that what he is doing is appreciated by people. And I then started posting on Facebook, and I asked people to send in messages of encouragement, and if anyone wanted to Skype. At that time, we didn't have WhatsApp, we didn't have a lot of things. I think we just had Skype for video calls. So I would just put my Skype ID, and I would say, I'm going to be at the hospital in the next 1 hour. If anyone wants to call in and say hello, I'm going to be there, and I can translate because he doesn't understand English. And so that's what we did. And he got so many calls from all over the world, from Australia. I remember Sybil Foxcroft called in from Australia, and she encouraged him so much, and he was so happy. And we had a couple of calls in from the UK, from the US. And really it just uplifted his spirits,
And that was a germ of an idea. That was a germ of an idea that you did something. You did a proactive thing for a hero. Here he is fighting for his life. He's lost his coworker. He's trying to figure out, where am I going in this world? Like, what do I do? And that you were very early on. In fact, you were the first NGO, and for our audience, an NGO is a non-governmental organization. So you are not an official organization. Your foundation, like our Nasefu Wildlife, we're supporting the organizations there. And you were the first to raise awareness about the challenges faced by rangers in the field. And when you talk to people, day-to-day people, about how many rangers were losing a year in wildlife crime due to poachers, they're like, what? I said, you have no idea how these people put their life on the line. And in specific areas of Africa where the crime syndicates are embedded and have a lot of money, they're outfitting these their poachers with AK-47s and tactical gear. And the government rangers may just have the bare minimum, just because of the economy and the availability of money and funding for the stuff like this. So you use the power of the media and putting the word out, and you changed the life of a ranger, but you also started a movement that is still going on today.
Yeah. I would say that kind of galvanized, my resolve to raise awareness on all these challenges at a bigger level. And so I planned to do a walk from Arusha, which is in Tanzania, to Nairobi here in Kenya. It was more than 200 miles. It took 15 days, and I had about 70 people join from all over the world, just who joined off of Facebook. So that was quite exciting. And the aim of that walk was really just to raise awareness on the challenges that rangers are facing on the ground, but also to raise awareness about the status of elephant poaching and elephant mortality, both in Kenya and Tanzania. I was very lucky to get a lot of support from the ministry in Tanzania and in Kenya as well. And we really changed a lot of perceptions. I remember before we did the walk, I did a small survey in a local university here in Kenya. And I asked people, what's the first thing you think about when you think of a wildlife ranger? And I believe it was 82% of young Kenyans felt that rangers were involved in poaching. And the perception was that rangers must be involved in poaching because they know where all the elephants are. And, how would the poachers possibly know? The park is so huge. And so it's just these misconceptions that people have about wildlife movements and, just basic, what for us is basic information. And after the walk, we did another survey, and we found that that figure had reduced to less than 12%. So for me, it was hugely successful with regards to my goal and my aim of the walk, which was to raise awareness for rangers, make people care about rangers, and really change this misconception that they're involved in poaching and that they're responsible for all the poaching. It's much bigger than that, as you know. Poaching isn't it's not something that is
And it's
single
different
tiered. It's
from,
very
and it's,
multi-layered.
yes, and it's different
Exactly.
from country to country as well. You know what I mean? From area to area. It is a very, it's not a uniform issue with the same issues. I always tell people, anybody who are protecting rhino, that's another whole level of military operation. I mean, we're talking like highly, highly, highly trained people are doing intel and, subterfuge, because they're dealing with such sophisticated crime syndicates. But then you have poachers just in a normal area, just taking out one or two animals and then on their way. So you're right. It's very different and dynamic all across Africa. And there is a flood of misinformation out there and lack of information. So that is a challenge that we both relate to, trying to get the information out correctly, not hearsay, but the actual facts.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that was also kind of a driving force for me, was to make sure that the Kenyan public knew about what was happening on the ground with elephants. And so when I was writing for the Star, I remember one of my highlights working for the Star newspaper was when I got a double page, and it was the first time ever in Kenya that we had published a photograph of a poacher as a wanted person, like a wanted suspect. And as soon as that paper, like that publication was out, he just ran for the hills. He went into Tanzania, but then the news spread into Tanzania. So the Tanzanian authorities worked with Kenya Wildlife Service and rangers on our side here, and he was successfully apprehended, I believe, by Big Life Foundation rangers and Kenya Wildlife Service, and Tanapa rangers as well. So that was a huge success. And I feel like this whole issue of dissemination of information is very close to my heart, because people need to know what's happening. I left media to join conservation full time. I'm now managing a conservancy. It's down at the coast of Kenya. It's called the Kipini Conservancy. It's an amazing, amazing ecosystem. One of the only ecosystems in East Africa where you can find a leopard, lion on a beach. With turtle nesting sites and everything. Such a unique place, thriving in biodiversity, but nobody really knows about it, because the only thing you'll ever see in the media, especially locally from Tana River or Lamu County, is all of the terrorist attacks and all of the insecurity and all of the clashes. It's very rarely that you'll find positive stories about this place, and never ever has the conservancy been spoken about. So now I'm hoping to slowly change that, because it really is a very unique place that needs a lot of support, and that is a critical habitat and ecosystem for elephants that are coming in to give birth. They come in and give birth in our forests. We are sitting on the critical elephant corridor that opens up the route between Somalia and the Tsavo ecosystem. So, every reason for me to be there, really, right now, and I'm loving it. It's been very, very challenging to work in this ecosystem, especially, I would say, as a woman. But I'm very grateful to have the team that I have, because they're very grounded, very committed to wildlife security and protection, and are quite happy to work around the clock like I do. So yeah, I'm working with a great team, my rangers at Ulinzi Africa Foundation, and also those from the Kipini Conservancy, and also Kenya Wildlife Service, because we all strengthen each other and supplement each other efforts. It's conservation is not it's not a one-man show or a one-woman show. It really takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of people coming together to make good things happen for wildlife.
So let me ask you, your ranger teams, do they assist Kenya Wildlife Service? Like where we are, we've got the National Parks Department, the Zambian National Parks Department, Wildlife Department, and we work in tandem with them. So we support them. Is that the same situation in Kenya where you guys are adding an extra layer of ranger availability, presence in the field? Is that how you guys are working with your foundations?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So, Ulinzi, you've got Walk with Rangers and Unbound. So which do they, I know you're overseeing all of them. Are they very independent? I know your ranger teams, you guys all work together in that. Are these very separate projects with different visions that you're tackling, or is it still under the same umbrella with conservation?
So the Unbound project is it's actually it was a separate project that was highlighting women in conservation and animal rights and animal welfare that was run by oh gosh, I forgot her name. 1 second, it'll come to me in a moment.
It'll come back. It'll come back.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's just slipped my mind.
No worries.
But yeah, it's not affiliated with us at all, but obviously thanks to the Unbound project, it's just opened up a lot of other doors and new layers of awareness for us. But under Ulinzi Africa Foundation, that's what we're registered as here in Kenya. We're registered nonprofit. And under Ulinzi Africa Foundation, I run the initiative Walk with Rangers, which Ulinzi kind of birthed itself out of the walk. We did the walk in 2014, and I had an online fundraiser going on at the same time. I didn't think I was going to raise a lot of money. I thought maybe $1,000, $2,000. But I ended up raising about $40,000 or $42,000, I think. So yeah, it was massive. And so then I started thinking, well, hang on a second, maybe I could do something different with this money. And at the time, there were two gaps in conservation that I had noted very strongly in my mind. One was the lack of adequate attention to rangers nationwide. And secondly, was the lack of wildlife security presence in the Tana River Delta. Tana River is Kenya's longest river. It's nearly 1,000 kilometers long and meets the Indian Ocean right at the place where now we're based. So it's an immensely important ecosystem, critical habitats in there with indigenous and endemic coastal rainforests, endemic species that you can find nowhere else on Earth. And yet, the rate of poaching in Tana Delta was just exponential. Some of the highest rates of poaching that I have seen countrywide from my personal experience. The rate of human-wildlife conflict has risen in the last 6 years by more than 400%. And yet there wasn't any conservation organization that was focusing on this area. You've got dozens of conservation organizations focusing on the Mara ecosystem, on the Savos, on Amboseli. And so you find that this place was really very much ignored, like an ignored corner of conservation. And I understood from the onset what the apprehension was. I mean, it is a high security zone. You've got militia versus military situation ongoing. So it's not really attractive per se. But for me, I'd had very personal experiences with the wildlife here, with elephants, with lions. And I just really felt like maybe I could be the difference for this place. And so that's when I put my funds together, knocked on a couple of doors, but again, people were apprehensive. So I said, okay, maybe I'll just do it myself. And I registered Ulinzi. So then we set up the anti-poaching unit, which we've been operational now, based in Kipini Conservancy, but also spreading out across the Delta wherever we're needed. But we still run Walk with Rangers. I do it as an annual event, and we take a much smaller group of people. So you pay a fee, obviously, but you get a chance to come and live with us in the field and join us on our desnaring operations. If we're doing a wildlife treatment, you have an opportunity to participate in that. And it's really a chance for you to be in the shoes of rangers. And for me, that's so important, because that's how I started. Like, that's what really drove me to be in conservation, because I lived with rangers, and I felt like I'm making an impact. I'm making a difference just by being here, by joining them on patrol. Every single snare that I lift, I'm saving a life. And that feeling of, making a difference and responding to your calling, and really finding your purpose, I think is life changing. And I wanted to offer that experience for anyone who wants it. So we do run it every year. This year we're going to do it in Kipini Conservancy, because I'm hoping that I'm going to be lucky with a couple of turtle hatching and wildlife treatments and everything else. But even if we don't meet those timelines, because as you know, life in the bush with wildlife is quite unpredictable. You can't tell the turtles to come out of their eggs tomorrow. You just have to chance it. You just have to chance it. But even if that doesn't happen, then people will still have an opportunity to meet the rangers and live with them, and eat what they eat, sleep where they sleep,
go on night patrols. Idea. It's such a great idea, and I might steal it for
so I hope you can join sometime.
Yeah, I would love to. And I'm going to tell you a backstory. So I'm older than you, and where my passion for conservation and wildlife and everything was, I was raised most of the week on the Awash Game Reserve. I would do a little school in Addis Ababa, and I was the youngest, so I always went with my parents to Karayu Lodge. My father had started this safari camp, but we used to go to Kenya all the time. So I have such a soft spot for Kenya. Now, mind you, this was when I was young, and the numbers of animals were so much more than we have now. I mean, at the time, late 60s, early 70s, there were 10 million elephants on the continent, and now we have under 300,000. But I have such a deep love for Kenya, and I took it personally when, Kenya's been going through an awful lot over the years. And you said, when I was researching you, that you said you grew up in the dark shadow of the worst era of poaching, where it was staggering amounts of elephants were being killed. I mean, this is really when poaching was taking off. It was unchecked. Nobody was doing anything about it. And when you saw the numbers of tusks on the ground, you almost thought, I think I'm hallucinating, because this can't possibly be. So here you are growing up in this dark shadow of like the worst era of poaching. It's not good now, but it was really, really bad in the timeline you were talking about, and that you are doing something about it. So it makes me happy that my sister in conservation is in Kenya doing what you're doing. It makes me happy because I love Kenya. We have great friends and memories of Kenya, and we were there like all the time in Mombasa and in Malindi, and of course in Nairobi. And the wildlife there was magnificent, and to see what's happened to Africa over the decades is just, it's, you said that one moment in your life was when you saw that recently poached elephant, and you see the complete annihilation, mutilation of these magnificent animals for a tusk or something. It's the most heinous thing. Your life is changed. You're never the same after you see a poached animal. You're just never the same. The rhino, the blood, the just complete lack of regard for a living thing, just to get an item to sell on the black market for $1. It doesn't even compute. And that we all have those moments in conservation that got us there. And that elephant story really resonated with me, because I remember seeing my first poached elephant as a kid, and I was never the same. I mean, that really started this whole thing little did I know years later I would start a foundation like you, and that you're in that region doing that. Not only are you with a ranger team, but you're also supporting the rangers and doing this Walk with Rangers idea. So let me ask you this, because I like Coexist to be a platform for other up and coming foundations around the world to learn something. How is fundraising going? Like, how do you fundraise? Because I always find that to be an incredible challenge, because there are a zillion organizations out there. What cuts through the clutter, and how are things doing? How are things doing in COVID?
Oh my God, that's a whopper of a question, that one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Funding it's a nightmare. It's
Yeah.
I can't sleep at night many nights because I don't know where the Rangers' next paycheck is coming from, to be honest. You know, I bank a bit of funds just for a rainy day, like in case things really, really get tough. And I don't touch that, because that's really like when things get really, really tough, because I want to be prepared for that situation if we ever get there, which I really hope we don't. But you know, for us, being a very small Kenyan-based organization, being quite new, it's very challenging. You know, we haven't been lucky enough with any grants yet. You know, which would have been massive for us.
And stop right there, because I want to touch upon that, because I want to listen. Just that you said that, thank God, because people say, oh, well, what about grants? Well, you have no idea how impossible it is to get grants. I mean, we've written a million and we think, oh my gosh, this time this grant's going to go through. Nah, you know what I mean? It is. And then especially if you want to get like a government grant through the US, well, you have to have a physics degree. I didn't know that when I was going into writing an application for grant, that you needed a physics degree or, you know, a Nobel Peace Prize because you're the smartest person in the world. It's so convoluted and so difficult. It's really challenging getting grants. So
grants are very, very difficult to get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So continue. So where do you seek funding, and like how do you do this? Because I can really relate to the sleepless nights.
You know, to be very honest with you, we've been very reliant on Facebook, like just on social media, like crowdfunding. We've been so reliant on crowdfunding. So we'll do a campaign here and there and raise 2K, raise 5K, raise 10K if we're very lucky. So that's kind of what's been keeping us afloat. I was very, very fortunate, and I really must thank from the bottom of my heart Peace for Animals and Katie Cleary, because this lady, oh my God, I can't even tell you, met me in 15 minutes and just believed in me and cut me a check for whatever my deficit was. And I was like, well, are you sure you can't do that? I'm like bawling my eyes out in the coffee shop, you know, because I'd waited 4 years. I'd been fundraising 4 years for my Ranger project. And I didn't want to start my Ranger project with the amount of funds that I had, because I needed to make sure I have enough to sustain their salaries for at least a year. And I even remember when I hired them, I said to them, look, guys, this might just be a contract for 1 year. Like, if I get more funding, we'll keep you on. If I don't, then I'm so sorry, but I'm just letting you know in advance. And the reason I also had to do it that way was because this place just needed urgent intervention. The scale of poaching, oh my God, daily. Like every single day, you got people coming in there and poaching out the wildlife, poaching the trees, cutting the trees down. And to give you a bit of perspective of how bad it is where we are, we used to have, just about 6-7 years ago, we used to have hirola, antelope. We used to have a lot of dik-diks. We used to have reedbuck. We used to have elands. We used to have ostrich, hippos, like so many hippos. And now, not a single eland, not a single ostrich, not a single reedbuck, not a single duiker, just been poached out entirely, wiped off that entire space. And so now I'm on this mission to make sure that they don't decimate the remaining herds of wildlife. We've got resident herds of topi, zebra, the warthogs are coming up really nicely. And, you know, we've just to give you a perspective of how bad the poaching was when we started. Since we've started last year, we did 16 treatments of zebras with arrow wounds and snares. In fact, today I've had a vet fly in to remove an arrow from a zebra. So, it's still ongoing, but it is so much, it's like 1,000 times better than it was when we first started. And so I'm so grateful to Peace for Animals, because they threw us this lifeline, and just in the nick of time. Had we not gone in there when we did, there would be nothing left to save anymore. And now that we're there.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, would you reintroduce like dikers? We used to have a diker when we were little.
Yeah, that is the plan.
Stabilize this? Okay, good.
Yeah, the plan is to bring up the level of wildlife security. And once I increase my ranger unit, we're now looking at adding a second ranger unit. I need funds for that, obviously, but hopefully if that comes through, I'll add 6 more rangers, because we're covering a very wide area of about 40,000 acres just in this immediate area where we're based. It's very difficult to do that with just a team, the small team that I have. So if I have more rangers, I can cover a wider area. And then once that's secure, I can then start looking at replenishing the wildlife and reintroducing lost species, for the sake of the well-being of the ecosystem. That said, we have had other successes. We managed to get somebody from the Nature Defense Foundation, who sponsored a collar for one of our lions who was being threatened by herders with poisoning. We managed to save him just in the nick of time, and he's thriving now. He's doing super well. And so, I'm quite fortunate that I just have very good friends, and a big up to Kelly for all of the support. Sometimes we'll have like an urgent need, and I'll put it out there in my small group, and people will try and help. We still have a lot of challenges with funding. That said, however, for general funding, when I have an emergency, it's easier for people to want to give to like save the zebra or whatever. But we still do need the funds for an extra ranger unit and a secondary anti-poaching vehicle, because we're still operating with just the one right now. And it's just gone in for servicing because it's not doing very well. It's been operating for 5 years in anti-poaching. So she's seen life.
Yeah. So let me ask you, so your first ranger team, how many rangers do you have on there? On your team? I have
two sections, which is 6 and 6.
6 and 6. And then
so 12 in total. Yeah.
So the new team that you need to get, will that be 6 rangers as well? Okay. Yeah. I just want to write this all down. And if somebody wanted to, an angel or somebody listening or watching this right now, and they wanted to help fund your ranger team, where should they go to? What website or Facebook? Where would you like somebody to reach out to you?
So you can find us on our website. It's ulinziafricafoundation.org. I think you can also link to our website if you just type in walkwithrangers.org as well. I think it just sublinks into the same website, or you just ask me directly on my handles, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Or our pages on Instagram, Facebook, Ulinzi Africa Foundation. We also, for the US, we have a fiscal partner, Generation Awakening. So they take in all of our US-based donations, just so that our US-based donors can get the, the tax benefit, I think is what you call it. So they collect for us and then send it to us every quarter. And then we are able to then implement the programs on the ground here. And then we also, for UK-based donors, we work with Born Free very closely. Will Travers who's the CEO of Born Free, is also the patron of my foundation, Ulinzi Africa. And he's just been so supportive of everything that we're doing. So there's a link also on the Born Free website where you can donate if you're based in the UK. But otherwise, you could PayPal us just on the links on our website directly as well.
Yeah, and I know my co-founder, if she's watching this, she's everything you're saying, I feel like I'm just listening in my own head. I'm hearing everything you're saying, like funding for Rangers, our vehicle's about to go. I feel like I'm just talking to myself. You're just in Kenya, because I can't tell you how many times I just don't sleep because I'm thinking I've got Rangers to pay. And I don't know if your setup with your foundation is the same as Nasefu, but we also have an education arm. We've built a school. We're building a second school with Park Lane so we can teach kids conservation at the early ages when they're most malleable. We've got beekeeping. We've got a women's sewing project to bring in economic opportunities. So we're hitting anti-poaching from all angles. Does your organization go that way, or are you straight enforcement? Are you just a ranger driven?
So we focus heavily on wildlife security, but we also do a lot of community awareness. We do a lot of community barazas. In Swahili we call them barazas, which is kind of like the communal meetings that you have with the elders, just to sensitize them about what's going on. We also work very closely with there's a local what we call a CBO, a community-based organization where we are, and they actually do the turtle nest monitoring. So they monitor all the turtles coming up, like when they're laying their eggs and then the hatching of the eggs and everything else. And they also maintain the database for any poaching incidents that we have of turtles. And so we're collaborating with them quite closely to make sure that the beach side of, like the marine side of things, is covered. And we also, for now, we haven't yet done any kind of school projects in a structured way, just because we've been so overwhelmed with the wildlife treatments and the wildlife security situation. But what we are doing is, like, every once in a while, like when we have some time to relax, then we'll get a couple of the kids together from the community and take them on a game drive and do some awareness for them and education for them. But of course, we do have plans this year to roll that out in a more structured way, through partnering with the county government and the schools. It's just purely because we've been overwhelmed with the security situation. And I want to say that one of my greatest challenges there right now is not just wildlife security from a ground level, because you can make an arrest, but what happens after the arrest has been such a challenge, because last year we had nearly all of our cases, almost dismissed in court. We had an incident where bushmeat poachers were arrested with a whole buffalo carcass, and they got 2 months of community service, which is not even, like, the wildlife law in Kenya. That's not what the penalty is. The penalty is $2,000 or 5 years, or both. And so that's been one of my major challenges here. And so what we're now planning to implement, together with the Kenya Wildlife Service and the support of KWS, of course, is a judiciary training whereby we bring together the prosecutors, the magistrates, even the police and the investigation officers together, to now sit down with them and explain to them, this is the wildlife law. And again, we have to do this because it's never, wildlife law has never been enforced in this region, ever.
Yeah,
like we're the first ones.
You're spinning your wheels if you're arresting these people and you're not getting the convictions. And Kenya is known to be very lenient. I mean, it's just known to be that way. And you're right. There has to be a judicial arm, a legal arm, that if you have somebody in custody, they're caught, you have the evidence, they have to do time. There has to be a penalty, or you are
there
just
has to be a consequence. And you have to follow the law. Like, Kenya has some of the strongest wildlife laws in Africa, right? We're the first ones to have a life sentence for poaching an elephant in on the continent. And so it's really important that people are aware about the wildlife law, especially in the judiciary. I mean, it's a no-brainer, you know. So that has
Yeah.
really been one of my main challenges, I would say, which also kind of delays all these other progressions that we need to make as an organization. But you know, hopefully it'll all piece together and happen in its own time. I really believe that uh, things happen in their own time. I've never been one to rush anything, or like I always try to push my way, but where I find that I'm pushing really hard and it's not working out, I've learned to just take a step back and let things flow naturally. And then it just happens wonderfully, really. So I'm just waiting. I know it's going to come together really nicely. I can say that everyone from the judiciary to the police to the Kenya Wildlife Service, like everyone's just been super supportive of the conservation initiatives in this region now. And we all just really want it to start coming up in a positive way. So yeah, it's only good things can happen from here.
Yeah,
Is what I can say.
And I'm glad you're taking it beyond just the enforcement on the ground with the rangers. You do have to be able to, and that's the one thing with our ranger team, since we work so closely with it, formerly ZAWA, now it's DNPW, is that we make sure that everything is dot the I's, cross the T's. So when it gets to the court, they can't go, oh, you forgot. Nah, no, it's all buttoned up. So if somebody's going to go down for a crime, they're going down for a crime. And that is something that we really stay on, because then we're just spinning our wheels. So I'm so glad that you are pushing for that reform, especially since Kenya was the first one to actually do it. You know, if they're setting these laws, then enforce it. I mean, be the light of the continent, so people can say, look what Kenya's doing and look how it's turning around there. So I think that's really excellent. So so what do you see? Let me ask you quickly, how do you see poaching now? How is it decreasing over, let's say, the last 5 years? Is there an awareness? Is it getting worse? How are you seeing it on the ground where you are?
I would say that it's elephant poaching has almost stagnated. Like we don't have a lot of elephant poaching cases in Kenya now, for many reasons. But bushmeat poaching is just, yeah, it's completely out of control. And I feel like people don't talk about bushmeat poaching enough. You know, the loss to biodiversity is really alarming. It's unfortunately not as glamorous as an elephant when you're looking at an impala that looks like a goat. But really, we're losing a lot of biodiversity to bushmeat poaching, and it's completely unsustainable. It's got to be stopped by any means. And so we take bushmeat poaching very seriously in Kenya, thankfully, and rightly so. You know, so I can say that bushmeat poaching is out of control. Elephant poaching is down. We haven't had any rhino poaching incidents that I know of this year, so that's been good. So we're in a good place with the larger species, but with the smaller species, it's not good, and unfortunately doesn't get a lot of traction in the media because it's just not glamorous enough, unfortunately, but it needs to start getting out there. I want to say we recently had an incident where we arrested a bushmeat poaching suspect. Excuse the loud cars because I'm in the city now. But bushmeat poachers are really, there's this misconception also. I feel that bushmeat poachers are poor people hunting to feed their family. And I hear this so much. And I want to refute it very strongly, because it's on a very off chance that you'll find a bushmeat poacher who is genuinely like hunting to feed his family. Majority of the time they are poaching in a large scale. They will target larger species like buffalo, zebra, or giraffe to supply the black market, or even just restaurants in the nearest town, or sell door to door to their neighbors. So it's purely commercial. And it doesn't go cheap either. It's not like they're selling it for, a low amount of money. So it's purely commercial. They make a lot of profit. from bushmeat trade, and also they are hardened criminals. And I'm very hardlined about this because we recently had an incident where we arrested a bushmeat poacher, and it was treated as a petty crime, a petty offense. So he was let out with a cash bail. He did a runner. But aside from doing a runner, he and his friends, because they poach in gangs a lot of the time, started now threatening the community. Okay, this is an innocent community. They've done nothing wrong. But now, because one person is a criminal inside that community, he's now threatening all of them because he feels that his neighbor came and reported something to us. So, they're now not feeling very safe. And I just feel like bushmeat poaching really needs to be taken with the seriousness it deserves. It needs to be handled with the seriousness it deserves.
Yeah, they're scuzzy, and you're absolutely right. They are thugs. And again, you're dealing with criminal syndicates who have money. They don't care. They don't care about the future of a species. They don't care. They just don't care. They're in it for the money. If you're coming for the big money, crime syndicates coming out of Asia, when you're trying to run rhino horn or tusks and stuff like that, this is a very sophisticated, very well funded. It's the number 3 illegal crime in the world. And you're talking about an unbelievable amount of money. And these people are also funding the wet markets. They're getting these animals to the wet markets, the pangolins and all that. They're running these animals. So you're right. They are basically thugs, and they're now a cancer in this community. And that cancer is spreading. And like you said, everybody has a sense of fear that something's going to happen to them. And I'm glad you called them out. And I hope the tide turns, and I hope people call them out for what they are. They are thugs. Yeah. You're absolutely right. Very few people are legitimately doing it.
Well, that's why the communities sell them out, isn't it? But then unfortunately, if they don't get the sentences and the penalties that they should, then they go back and they threaten the same communities. So it's a bit of a catch-22. And that's why it needs to be treated with the seriousness that it deserves.
Do you think there's a chance that they'll up their jail time? Do you think they'll actually give them hard time if this is a repeat offense? Like, hey, not only did you do an illegal act with the bushmeat trade, but now you're threatening
Yeah, with
people.
this guy for sure. Like, I'm just waiting for him to appear in court, and then we'll see from there.
Okay, good. I hope he goes down. I hope they throw the book at him. So that's good to know. So again, this is, every country has different situations, and there is a very strong criminal element in Kenya, and I'm glad you guys are looking at it and going after it and not being afraid of it. And I really applaud that. And thank you for not taking your eye off the prize, what you're trying to do, even though you know how tough it is, and you have a lot of obstacles against you, and naysayers. But the more they say no, the more you say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get it done. So, if there's any way that we can help you, things that we learn, if you're like, hey, what about doing this? Email me anytime, because I may have run into that situation. Vic is mostly over there all the time. She's been there almost 10 years. So, she's really embedded there. So we're happy to help and support in any way we can, because this is a job. We're all on the same team. We're all on the same team trying to do this and make it change. Yeah. So again, let me run through a couple of things. So Ulinzi Africa Foundation.org is the website.
Yeah.
You guys are working in Kenya's Tana Delta, the ecosystem. You've got Walk with Rangers. When again did you say your next Walk with Rangers is going to be?
It's going to be around June, July. We have a Facebook page. Okay, I have to apologize because I haven't posted anything on our socials, but we have a Facebook page called Walk with Rangers.
Okay.
When I'm in the bush, I just don't post anything, but I'll be posting the itinerary on there. If you're interested in joining the Walk with Rangers, then you could also just drop us an inbox message on the Walk with Rangers page, or just DM me as well, and I'll send you the itinerary. Hopefully you'll be able to join. It's going to be super exciting.
Oh my gosh, it sounds fabulous. And the Unbound project, anything that you guys are working on with that we should be aware of?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay. So tell me the 5 things that you need the most right now, so we can put it out there. So, all we need is one person who hears it, and it might change your life, so you can get some sleep at night, not stress out like I do. So what are the 5
Yeah.
things that you guys need the most? Do you need a new
Well, I
Ranger
would
vehicle?
say we need a ranger vehicle, like that is just paramount. We also need support for our new ranger unit, so we need to hire 6 rangers. And if you want to support their salary, then we pay $250 per ranger.
Mhm.
And you can get a breakdown if you email us. So right now, our priority needs are the vehicle, setting up the second ranger outpost. Um, I would say also this year we're hoping to collar 2 more lions for the purpose of preventing human-wildlife conflict and
Mhm.
increasing and enhancing our monitoring of these lions. So that's going to be quite critical. Um, and yeah, if there's anyone out there who would like to support our schools outreach and education program, please reach out to us because it's something I feel really passionate about. And I really, really want to do it, but we're just a little bit undercut with regards to budgets and everything else. Finally, I would like to say that in the area where I am, the girl child is having a challenge. All of the girls in the communities where we're from, they don't go past high school. It's like you could even sit down with them and ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the answers are one of three. They'll either be completely blank because the only future they know is that they're going to finish school and go back to farm and be a wife and a mother, which is all great, but I feel like they need a chance to dream. And they've never, since I've been there, it's been quite fascinating for me, really, because they're almost like in awe, like when they see me driving a car and they want to like learn how to drive a car. And, I feel like those are very new experiences for them. They really need to have more of, I would say, touch with an outside world or a bit out, like somewhere outside of that little space. Because all they ever want to be, if anything, if not a farmer, is a nurse or a military soldier, because that's all they've ever seen there. And I really want to find ways to encourage the girls in these communities. Early pregnancy is a huge thing. We have a very high rate of HIV infections. And I just really, if anyone is out there that works on these issues, and if you would like to collaborate with us, please, please, please get in touch, because it's not my field of expertise, but I am in touch with these communities and I really, really want them to get some help. So I would say for now, those are my top 5.
That's awesome. And it makes me think of, we're hopefully going to be doing a campaign to raise funds for a compound where we are. And one of the main buildings that we're going to have is a women's center, because we want them to learn all sorts of things, new job skills, talk to a doctor, just different things, and maybe career opportunities. Maybe you learn to study something like that. So that's something, again, really near and dear to our heart. And I think that's a really good thing, because you know what? Women do a lot of work there, and they are a great resource for a country to thrive and succeed. And that's an untapped resource. If you've got all these great women there and nothing to do and no direction, you're wasting so much energy. Let me one ask quick question before we wrap up. Did you have any female rangers on your team?
I do not. At the moment, we just have all males.
I ask because we have female rangers and they are excelling. That's excelling, and they love it. So maybe one day they can become a field ranger. Might have a women's team out there, and they'll kick ass. We know that. They'll get the job done.
Yeah,
they will,
for sure.
Yeah. If I were a poacher and I saw these women coming my way, I'd be like, I give up. I'm done.
Yeah.
Take me, arrest me. I'm done. So that's awesome. Raabia, you've just been a pleasure. I'm listening to you and I hear so much of myself in you. And I just feel like I have this kindred spirit, like my best friend in Kenya already. We haven't even personally met yet, but I feel like we've been friends for life. We're walking the same path. I'm incredibly proud of you. I'm incredibly proud of your stick to it, your guts, doing something still in a man's world. you're protecting the wildlife, which is number one. You're doing it with all your heart and soul. And I really couldn't be more proud of you. And I'm so glad you were my guest today. So glad. I'm glad you were able to maneuver and get to your computer and we could have this great conversation. So again, my special guest here on Coexist is Raabia Hawa, and she's executive director of Ulinzi Africa Foundation. You can go to ulinziafricanfoundation.org. She's also the impetus, the creator of Walk with Rangers, another pioneering, great idea. And she looks to have an event happening in June or July, and we can keep you posted on that. And we're here if you need us. If you need anything, reach out to coe@nasefu.org. Happy to help in any way. Got to support the sisters. And again, really proud of you. And thank you for being my guest on Coexist. This is why I do it, to help great people like you and great organizations. And it makes me proud. Thank you for the
opportunity. And I hope to see you in Kenya soon.
Yes, I'd love to go back. I haven't been back in so long. I would love to see it, and to do a walk with Rangers and hang out with you would be just a dream come true. So, Raabia, have a great night. I know it's late in Kenya, so go get some sleep. And thank you for being on Coexist. All right.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
Thank you so much. And thank you to our sponsors, Attorney King's, Aquan Casino Resort, Indian Motorcycle of San Diego, The Gym, Serrano's Coronado, and IB Fitness. Can't do it without these guys supporting our show. And we'll see you soon in a couple of weeks on Coexist right here on IQ Podcast. Thank you so much. Bye, Raabia.
Bye.